Okay, something here a while back, a lady not from here, but from my hometown, as she was a widow, and she's 91 years old, different ailments or possibilities. We had her in the hospital here a while back, but she had asked me a question, and I got me to thinking. So one of the things that she asked was, why am I still here? I'm 91 years old. I've got pains, I've got aches, I got problems, family issues, so on and so forth. And I said, well, God evidently isn't through with you yet. There's got to be something. I don't know what it is, but, I tried to encourage her and tell her to think about it. So that kind of got me thinking about widows. And I know there are several here. And kind of the topic that I wanted to talk about today, and I may be a little short. I've been rushed here lately, but just to come out and talk about it a little bit. How many times do y'all think widows are mentioned in the Bible? According to my word search, it's 55 times. That's a pretty good number, you would think, right? And so in the very beginning, we're going to turn to Exodus 22 in verses 22, 24 here in a minute. But in setting up Exodus and Deuteronomy through that, realize that we were slaves. Okay? Now, what happens with slaves? They are told to what, when, how, where to eat, where to, such and such, as the military likes to say. And, they're not really taught to think. They're not really taught to do other than exactly what they were told. So in Deuteronomy, Exodus, Leviticus, God is teaching his people how to live. And it even says in the end of, I believe it's Deuteronomy or Exodus, one of the two, it asks that, they don't want you to do all these things, to keep all these laws, to keep all these purposes so that you would have good success. Now remember, as slaves, you don't get a choice. You don't get a choice. You do, work for the master, whatever he tells you to do. Even what you eat, what you drink, and I mentioned here in the past, that there were whole cities dedicated to beer in Egypt. But do you know why? They were the first energy drinks. That's what they gave the slaves to drink. That was the first energy drink that came around. So, you think about all this, in some ways, dumbed them down. They weren't educated. And God says, I want you to have good success. If you follow this way of life, good things will happen. The way of life he wants us to choose. So in this, we're going to turn to Exodus 22 and just, think about some of what God says about the widows, which to me was very interesting. Exodus 22. Starting in verse 22. And you shall not afflict any widow or fatherless. And when we go up a little bit farther, it says, you shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. And you shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you afflict them in any way, and they cry at all to me, I will surely hear their cry. Now that's a powerful thing you're giving a widow, right? That's very powerful. My wrath will become hot, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. That's pretty scary. Think about the power, right? Think about it just a bit. That God hears the widow's cry in anything that she says, in any oppression that she has. We talk about, does anybody agree that the times are getting bad, right? That there are definitely problems. What is one of the other things the Bible says? That a book is written about those who sigh and cry for the things of the ages that we live in. And that a book of remembrance is written to them about do that. Someone asked me many years ago when it was another widow, she said, all I get to do is, all I can do is pray. I'm going like, what more do you want? I mean, that's an awesome responsibility if you think about it. We're going to get into that a little bit more, but think about the responsibility that a widow has to pray and that God will hear them. In any way if you afflict him. Let's turn to James 1:21. And remember, this is teaching the children of Israel, coming out of Egypt. And because they haven't, and there probably was some people who knew the laws, but there were probably ones that did not, or it was forgotten, or it was driven out of them. And we need to remember that. All right, James 1:27. A pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit the orphans and the widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. To visit the widows, to be them. Now, I'm going to say, when a visit is a two-person conversation, is it not? You're not just talking to the widow's talking to you. What's the things that a widow can teach? They have life, they have experiences. It says for the older to teach the younger and to learn from their life and their testimonies and their experiences. So they have much to give, and we have much to learn. A pure and undefiled religion before God. What could you say about that? Let's turn to Revelation 6. Revelation 6, verses 9 through 10. And when he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell in the earth? And then a white robe was given unto each one of them, as it is said to them, that they should rest a little while longer, until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren, who would be killed as they were completed. Widows, white robes, judgment, different things that they are given because of the sighs and cries of the world that they pray for. Think about that just a little bit. I actually should have turned to Luke 18 first and then went back to that, but we'll still take that. Luke 18, verses 7 and 8. And then the Lord said, hear what and chapter 18 talks about the widow going to the unjust judge and being persistent. Being persistent. She took the unjust judge and changed his mind. So widows can be persistent. Would anyone agree with that? Be positive. Be that driving force. Remember, they have years of experience in how to do things, and we need to listen. But in this case, when I skipped through first through thing, and it says, at verse 5, it says, let's go back up to 4. And he would not for a while, but afterward he said within himself, though I do not fear God, nor regard man. Now that's an interesting point for a judge, don't you think? Since the whole point of a judge is to judge the law, right? But he doesn't regard man nor God, but yet this widow he listened to. Yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. And sometimes we have to be persistent. That's just part of what we need to do. We have to, what does it say? Endure until the end. So end is death, right? So that means right up until that death. And I'm going to make something that's very interesting as an observation I made when my father was passing, 2019. And kidneys were shutting down, organs were shutting down. And, he would still look up in the bed and look at me just to see if I was there. But, the body, the man, we want to live. Our body is designed to live. We want to live. It brought a new meaning to letting the old man die. Because the old man wants to fight. He wants to fight. Sometimes we got to pick up a club, just to change. But being persistent, and a widow praying, being persistent, being that example for us to see, that she changed his mind. And verse 6, it said, and the Lord said, hear what the unjust said, and shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him? Though he bears long with them, I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? God will avenge. We have many other scriptures that say the same thing. God is a just God. Now, I've had my problems in the past. Some of y'all probably had some problems. May not have went the way you wanted it to go. But sometimes we look myopically in vision. We see that right in front of it. This is my problem. This is my trial. Right? That's not the end of it. Even when we talk about all the things going on in the tribulation, and I know for years and years and years we talked about death, destruction, horrible things going on. Why did we stop there? Because that's not where it stops. That's not where the Bible stops. It talks about the coming kingdom of God, the healing, the justice, God's avenging the widows and the orphans and the strangers, his own people. Now, have you thought about that you're going to have to pray for your enemies so that God says, okay, yeah, you did this to my daughter. You did this to my daughter. Would that not scare the bejeebies out of you? Just a little bit. It says this is an awesome thing to be in the hands of the living God. An awesome thing. If it's just you and God in the square, that might be a little scary. Just you and God. Well, my friends, there was a bunch of us and, no, God said, no, I'll get to them in a minute. It's just me and you. You need to go to my daughter. You need to go to my son and say, pardon me, I did not know. My eyes were not opened. And we're going to ask for mercy. And the widows are doing the same thing. Let's go to Psalms 18. Psalms 18, 7 and 8. Oh, let's go back up to back up to verse 2. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My God is my strength, in whom I will trust. My shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. And I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. And the pangs of death surround me, and the floods and ungodliness made me afraid, and the sorrows of Sheol surrounded me. The snares of death confronted me, and in my distress I called upon the Lord, and cried out to my God, and he heard my voice from his temple, and my cry came before him, even unto his ears. And the earth shook and trembled, and the foundations of the hills also quaked and were shaken, because he was angry. What did we read earlier? Do you really want to provoke the anger of God? Let's go to verses 16. And I would suggest for you to read the rest of it, but starting in verse 16, he sent from above, and he took me and drew me out of many waters, and he delivered me from my strong enemies and from those who hated me, for they were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support, and he brought me out into a broad place and delivered me because he delighted in me. When he delights in you, isn't that a great thing? Isn't that a great protection? And I don't remember if I talked here last time about how much God is our fortress, how he is our stronghold. He is our deliverer. He's our protector. He's our avenger. And it's a great study, and I haven't done it in a while, but just looking at all the names of God and what they mean. Now, if my understanding correct, I think there's only 3 translations written that I know of that actually put in, when it says God, it says, God is my strength. God is my fortress. God is my shield. And each one of those names have a meaning to us and a purpose. So God is he is our fortress, and he is our thing. And like I say again, verse 24, I'm sorry, 19, whoop, too far. Anyway, that God, do you really want God's wrath to become hot? We say God provides for us, right? And it's something when reading this, when we turn back to Deuteronomy 10, verses 28, it's talking about the third tithe and what it's set aside for. It's set aside for the orphans, the widows, and the stranger. But this was what I found interesting. It said, so that they may be satisfied. They may be satisfied. Not just enough to get by. Not just enough to have a little food on their table. It says that God present that they be satisfied. It was a different thought that I had thought of in a while. And I know other things in the past that wasn't exactly true. I know used to, in times past, that they would take the money that was left over from the third tithe and put it in the general fund. That is not what God had intended. I want to tell a small story years and years ago. And y'all probably remember Waco was part of United for a while. And one of the things we did that year is instead of the home office providing for our widows, our local congregation provided for our widows. And we got them a van to run around in and a driver, put them up in a nice hotel. And, gave them a little extra money. Not just enough to get by, but, to really have a great feast. Because we had enough in the third tithe, and that's what it's for. Here's the interesting point. They took Mr. Hume to dinner. 4 widows took the head of the church at the time to dinner and paid for his meal. That's different. And they had a great time. They had a great time. Just think about that. Not to be just satisfied. And when it talks about, when we go to verses Deuteronomy 16 and 11, when it's talking about the feast, talking about Pentecost, and it's talking about the Pentecost and Feast of Trumpets, you're supposed to take care of the widow. To take care of the widow. And again, the same word is used, that they be satisfied. I haven't read that, or I don't remember reading it, but it says to be satisfied, to be full, to be taken care of. So could we say in this same regard, God set up an entire system of finances to take care of the widows and the orphans? That God so prepared in advance that he took care of them. We think about that. God takes care of his people. Something that doesn't happen in our government all that much, by the way. Audie and I have discussed various times, our leaders do not care for the people. We're going to be a different type of leader. These are different laws that God has shown us how to live. We're going to be a different people. We're going to take care of other people. And we do so now. I'm sure widows in here pray for other people. I'm absolutely sure of it. I try to do it, but I think I do it, but here again, I don't pray probably as near as much as we should. What it says talks about David. David prayed continuously. continuously. It's the small things. The other day a board let loose on the job site and hit me on the arm. It hurts. But, I should have prayed right then that it should have been healed. I didn't. I waited. But I should have done it right then, instantaneously. When somebody comes up to you, and how many of y'all actually have people come up to you and just spill their life guts? Does that happen? Why? Why? Think about it. They see something in you, which I'm going to say God is God's Holy Spirit, and we'll talk about that this afternoon, that God sees in you, that they see in you God. What are you going to do? If they ask you to pray for them, do you stop right there and pray? If so, great guns to you. Do you remember it later and pray again? These are all things that widows do. This is all things widows do. You say, Terry, well, when we talk about God gave me a talent, just one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he gave you more than one. But you know that talent is a gift from God? It's not something that you have. It's a talent that God gave you. If prayer is your talent, thinking about sitting on the knees of God on the throne room, or better yet, what if you're just walking in the garden with God? Just talking with God. Say, God, I got these concerns. I know these things that need to be said, and sometimes I don't know how to say all of them, but, I need to tell you what needs to be done. I would like to see this world. Do we hunger for that kingdom to come? Do we hunger for it? Do we picture it in our mind so much that it's not even feasible for us not to think about it? It's not the tribulations and the troubles. We are not the children of the destroyer. We are the children of God. We are to uplift, exhort, to teach, to help. And I think all widows do that. That's my opinion. But I think that's something that we need to think about. That we so hunger, and I know we do. I mean, I'm kind of talking to the choir here, as they used to say. But, so picturing that in our mind is so important so that nothing deters us. Let's turn to Isaiah 1. Isaiah 1, verses 16 and 17. It says, "Wash yourselves and make yourselves clean, and put away the evil of your doings from before my eyes, and cease to do evil. Learn to do good, to seek justice, to rebuke the oppressor, to defend the fatherless, and to plead for the widow." To plead. Not just them for me, but me for them. That we should pray for our widows, that they have comfort, that they're satisfied, that they have a good and wonderful life. Let's turn to Romans 12. Romans 12, verse 9 through 11. "Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, in honor, giving preference to one another, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, and disturbing to the needs of the saints, given to hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, and bless and do not curse." I spoke several years ago that cursing is not something that God gives us. That's not a power that he gives us. It's not something that we need to have. We are not to curse our enemies. We are to ask for mercy. We are to ask for kindness. And there are plenty of other scriptures, but I just wanted to bring that out, that that's not something that God gives us as ability. Here again, we are not the children of the destroyer. We're children of the living God. Do you see how precious you are in God's sight? You said, well, Terry, I'm losing my hair. I'm getting gray. I have aches and pains. Oh, good. I'm in the same club as the rest of y'all. But how much precious you are in God's sight? It says that not one hair on your head falls without God knowing it. So when you brushed your hair this morning, God counted the hairs that came out. Do we think about that? How precious we are? God says, when I make up my jewels in heaven, y'all are those jewels. Now, to make a jewel takes a little pressure and a little heat. It's got to be cut, and it's got to be polished. So I'm not saying we're not going to have problems. I'm not saying that. But think about how precious you are in God's sight. That he even started from before the foundation of the world and put these things in motion. I made mention before, we look out and count the stars of heaven, and we know that we're going to go out into heaven one of these days. All the galaxies, all the billions of places that are out there. Well, probably even quadrillions, but still lots and lots and lots. And I mentioned this before. Do you realize that's still just the physical world? That's just the physical world. Spiritually, we have no idea. But we think about that. What I just want you to do is visualize that purpose for us. How God so provides for you. Are you saying that God set up an entire galaxy for Miss West? That's going to be her. Billions upon billions of stars. With billions upon billions upon billions of planets. And that's going to be her galaxy. Think about it. God, does he not provide for you? Does he not put protection? Does God not say, I'm your protector, I'm your shield? I've made mention of this, and I still got to do it one of these days. The sword of truth and the shield of faith work together. Do you want God to wrap that shield around you? Do you think that he doesn't? What makes you think that he doesn't? Satan goes to God and said, well, yeah, if you pull that hedge away from Job, yeah, I'll get him. He didn't. Did God not protect him? At the end of Job, did not Job get 7 times more than he had? Not 7 wives, but 7 more, 7 times more than he had. Did God not do that? There's other scriptures that tell us that where God is I got to enunciate this correctly, a bivouac. Basically, it is a thorned enclosure to protect you from wild beasts. I'm not enunciating it correctly, so forgive me there. But it is. They do this in Africa, and one of the places they do it. But they take these thorns are like 2 inches in length. And they make this corral protection so they can sleep with their animals under their protection, with the wild beasts of the field. God is that. He mentions that many times. David talks about that. So God is your protector. There's nothing that can get to you. Not really. And even then, let's just say, what does it say? Daniel and his friends, they said, even if, O king, you burn us to death, we're still not going to do it. Still not going to do it. Because we have that vision, that hope that is set in front of us. That God started even before the foundation of the world. And that's what we got to realize. God is there for us. How precious you are in his sight. We are all placed in the body according to his purpose. Now, I had something brought to me here a while back. We usually talk, well, the little toe can't tell the eye not to do this, or the hands. Have you ever thought about that you're the kidneys or the liver? Where you purify the blood, you pull the poison out. Have you thought about that? The only reason I say this is the last couple of years I've had to deal with people who have kidney issues. Kidney is a very important thing. What part of your body would you want to do without? None. God puts us in the right place at the right time for the right purpose. We may not understand it from time to time. I agree with that. But have you thought about that you're the kidney that pulls out the poison out of the blood so that the whole body may live? What if you're that person? What if you're the pituitary gland that controls all the other organs? Would you want to get rid of that? No. There's many other parts of the body, all of them working toward the whole goal. So what is God's goal? It says, okay. Sometimes we do get weary in well-doing. Sometimes our body starts running out. Sometimes the liver and the kidneys just start shutting down. But we're to fight to that very end. It says that a book of remembrance was written to all those who sigh and cry for that world to come, for the troubles. And here again, we have troubles. Everybody in agreement with that? We have problems. It saddened me a couple of years ago. I learned that 1 million babies a year are aborted. 1 million babies. There's going to be a lot of babies come up in the kingdom. We think about it. Think about the joy and the hope that will bring. What does it talk about? I can't remember her name. Ruth's mother, right? Mother-in-law. How much joy she had when she had a grandson. How much joy she had. She thought she had a horrible thing. Her husband had passed. Her 2 sons had passed. Terrible things had befallen. God had a purpose. Showed her a great thing. We got a whole chapter written about her and Ruth. Think about that purpose. When we have, here again, come kingdom time, there's going to be the book of Terry, and it's kind of like David. I don't know if I want it written or not, Or there's going to be the, book of Audie or something like that. And it just, we're going to think, well, God, I don't know. And he said, no, look what you did. God says he calls the weak and the base things, right? And you're saying, okay, if I'm a widow, then I'm pretty weak. I don't have a lot to play with. But God did it so that he would be glorified. It's not your power. It's God's. He gives you the strength. He gives you the purpose. And he places you in his body for a reason. So I just want y'all to think about that. We'll talk to y'all in a little bit.